If you're new to using a chainsaw, sometimes it takes a little effort to get the chainsaw going. So here's some tips that will have you starting a chainsaw like a pro in no time. Although these instructions apply to Husqvarna chainsaws, we will also be covering the different steps which are required for Stihl chainsaws during this video. When you hire a chainsaw from Hirepool, you are required to read our instructions for use sheet, which can be found either on our website, attached to your contract, or by scanning the QR code on your equipment's green tag. So please take the time to read it and follow all the safety steps. Ensure you have the correct safety gear, including head, ear, eye and hand protection, which can all be purchased from Hirepool. You can also hire chaps from Hirepool, which will save your thigh in the event of a slip. Your chainsaw will come fully serviced out of the branch. However, before you start, it's always good to double check that all the safety devices are in place and working. Before starting your saw, you should also check the tension on the chain should be nice and firm, but not too tight that it won't budge. And before you handle the chain, make sure you're wearing gloves. Ensure there is enough movement that you can be confident the chain will move freely across the bar. Hirepool have two different chainsaw types which require different starting procedures. Our battery powered chainsaws are simple to use and don't require a pull start. Simply put the battery in, pull the trigger and you're away. And if you're not using the saw, make sure you pull the battery out to prevent any accidents. Our petrol powered chainsaws, however, require a few more steps to get going. When you pick up your chainsaw for hire, it will have a full tank of fuel and oil. It's best to double check that both are sufficiently full. Hirepool's range of chainsaws are run on a 2-stroke mix, and we can include spare fuel along with the hire. Now, before you begin, activate the chain brake prior to starting your chainsaw by pushing the chain brake forward. If your chainsaw is fitted with a decompression valve, press it now. It assists with firing the engine and starting your chainsaw. Pump the fuel primer at least 6 times until the fuel is visible. If you're doing a cold start, make sure you engage the choke. If doing a warm start, make sure it's disengaged. Ensure you place the chainsaw on a flat surface and check the bar is not in contact with the ground. Leaving the chainsaw on the ground, push your right toe cap into the rear handle to stabilize the chainsaw. Place one hand on the handlebar and the other hand on the starter rope handle. Pull upward, keeping it as vertical as you can without allowing the rope to chafe against the fan housing. Slowly pull the starter rope until you feel resistance. Then pull the starter rope hard several times until the engine fires briefly, with a cough or a splutter. Move the master control lever up 1 notch to the half throttle position to disengage the choke. Some saws will do this automatically. If it's a Husqvarna chainsaw, push in the blue choke control switch. If the chainsaw is fitted with a decompression valve, press it again. If you continue to pull the starter cord with the chainsaw still on full choke after the engine fires briefly, you may flood the engine and it won't start. If this is the case, this means too much fuel has entered the engine and you will have to wait for the fuel to drain out of the chainsaw before you can start the process again. This should only take 5 minutes. Once you have pulled the starter rope after disengaging the choke, the engine will fire and start running. Briefly touch the throttle trigger to blip the engine and return the saw to idle. You can now disengage the chain brake by pulling the chain brake guard back. Touch the throttle trigger briefly with your index finger to move the chain. In summary, here are the key points to remember about how to start a chainsaw. Check the chainsaw safety devices are working and the chain has their correct tension. Make sure you have the correct safety gear. Ensure the chainsaw is on flat and level ground and the bar is not touching the ground. Engage the chain brake prior to starting. Ensure you engage the choke before starting. Place your foot in the handle of the chainsaw for stability. Pull the start cord in a series of sharp tugs and allow the engine to briefly fire. Switch off the choke and continue to pull the cord until the chainsaw fires to life. And finally, squeeze the throttle trigger briefly to allow the chainsaw to idle, then disengage the chain brake. So there you have it. That's how to safely and easily start a chainsaw. If you'd like more information, our friendly Hirepool staff will be happy to answer any of your questions. Hirepool, the smarter hire.